speak about actually the state of higher education in Karnataka State Law Universities Act. Secondly, about Right to Information Act. So perhaps actually the second one you might think, why Right to Information Act for the teachers, right? So it is a useful actual act for everybody. Every citizen of this country must be knowing about that particular act. I'll speak about that actually when I come to that particular topic. Let me just actually start off now. The State of Higher Education Karnataka State Universities Act. Karnataka State Universities Act came into existence in 2000, right? In 2000, though actually it was passed in the state legislature in 2001. Retrospectively, it was made actually applicable from 2000. Before that, as teachers, you should be knowing what is actually the state of the higher education in Karnataka particularly, and in India in general, right? So let me just actually give a very brief actually backdrop of the educational scenario of this country. So India is the India's higher education system is the third largest after US and the China. Ours actually is the third largest actually higher education system it is, because one is pure actually the number 140 crore actually people, perhaps the most populous country on the face of the planet, should be having the largest education system in the world. Absolutely no doubt. Look at actually 2011 actually census. Only 10% of Indians actually were educated in 2011. Only 10. Please, some of you have actually switched on your audio. Please switch it off.
Uh-huh.
Your audio. Hello. Please switch off your audio. That was only 10% 2011, right? I'll come to the present status later. It has expanded exponentially. So we have added from 2000 to 2011, 20,000 colleges have added, and more than 80 lakh actually students have joined higher education. So how actually fast you are growing education-wise, especially higher education-wise. Look at actually the number of the universities actually India has. About there are 1,200 universities in the world. There, look, this is actually a broad breakup, not exact actually breakup, a broad breakup, because latest information actually may be slightly different. With a breakup of 54 central universities, 416 state and 125 deemed universities, 361 private and 7 institute under State Legislature Act, 159 institutes of national importance, which include IIMs, AIMs, IITs, IITs, etc., etc. Look, this is the broad picture actually of Indian higher education system. Moving further, can you imagine there are 54,000 colleges actually in this country? 54,000 colleges, right? Slightly maybe this side or the side. And it includes government degree colleges, private degree colleges. There are, believe it or not, 1,800 exclusive actually women's college in this country. Perhaps no other country in the world has so many exclusive women's colleges. Now, I'll tell you the story later on actually why in India women's college actually started. No, Mysore University was started in 1916. Maharaja of Mysore actually was responsible for it. And he could actually send his children actually to UK or bring teachers from UK to teach his children actually in the palace. But as a king, he thought, I must actually have a responsibility of giving this education to every citizen of this particular state. Then he wanted to start actually colleges, one for men, that is Maharaja's college, the other one actually for women, Maharani's college. When Maharani's college was started, not many parents were interested actually in sending, because at that time, early 80s, I'll tell you, people actually were hesitant actually of sending their children to college. Then Maharaja had to personally request actually the parents, please send your daughters. The college will be consisting of only women, principal, teachers, attenders, everyone will be, your daughter will be absolutely safe. That is how actually Maharani's college started. And later on, actually, many women's colleges actually started. There are 1,800 colleges, and some of them are really, in fact, actually famous colleges. I'm sure I'll tell you, many of you must be from women's college also. And the tertiary enrollment actually is 27%. It has slightly crossed 27. It's 31%. Slightly older data. Once upon a time, it was 5% or 6%. Means college level entry is actually out of 100 students who actually take admission to first standard primary school, only 27% of them will be going to the tertiary level, I mean after +2. There are 600 universities and 25,000 colleges yet to be accredited. NAC accreditation, you know it, I'll tell you. Look at actually the number of universities. Nearly 50% of the universities, they have not actually gone for NAC accreditation. And nearly 50% of the colleges also have not actually seriously thought about getting accredited actually by NAC. That is another thing. Higher education enrollments are abysmally low, as already told. In US and UK, I'll tell you, it is about 87 or 90%. Those children who join school, about 85% of them actually also go to the college. Whereas in India, it is almost actually one third. And almost two thirds of our universities, nearly 90% of our colleges are, two thirds of the universities, 90% of the colleges are rated as below average on quality parameters. Below average, not even average, below average. Two thirds. And 90% of the colleges are in that particular state. It is not my statement. This is what exactly our survey actually clearly indicates, officially announced actually by government of India. Post-independence scenario, like after independence, what happened? See, about actually 7,362, about 28% of the colleges have been recognized under 2F and 12B. 2F and 12B, these are the two recognitions the UGC must make, so that actually your college actually or the university will be getting the UGC grants and recognition actually by the UGC as an institution which deserves actually some kind of a aiding and recognition by other things. And total number of actually students enrollment, it is called gross enrollment ratio. It is 27.4. That was 17 and 18. It has gone up. It is 31% now. It is going up. And US, look at actually US. What is actually the gross enrollment ratio? Means the students from the school. What is the percentage actually the school children who take admission to the college? It's in India, it is about 31%, as I already mentioned. In US, it is about 88.2%. Germany, it is about 70%. France, about 65%. UK, about 60%. Brazil, about 51%. China, about 49%. Indonesia, 36%. India, 31%. And 26% actually in other areas. That's it. The two nations below India are South Africa and Pakistan, needless to say. I'll tell you. I wonder why South Africa comes there, but Pakistan naturally has to be below us, and their gross enrollment ratio actually is abysmally low. That's one thing. And look at this is really an eye opener. It says there are about 136.42 lakh students are in the universities and the colleges, right? Means about actually 12% 12.24% in university departments, about 1.5 crore actually students, only 12%. 12% are in the university and in the departments, which is controlled actually aided by the government. And 87, almost 88% actually are in affiliated colleges. Look at, I'll tell you, affiliate system actually is hardly prevails in 3 or 4 countries out of 193 countries in the world. Only 3 or 4 countries actually still have affiliation system. And India is the prominent one. Who are the other, if you ask? None other than our own wonderful neighbors and brothers, right? Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. These are the countries. No other country anywhere in the world actually have this affiliation system. Once actually son grows up to a particular level, he must be allowed to in fact actually live on his own. Unlike here, I'll tell you, the universities are actually 50 years old, their colleges are all 45 years old. The still actually 45-year-old colleges are under the control of the university. They were not allowed to be on their own. This is another thing. Women enrollment actually during independence was hardly 10%, right? Now it has gone up to 41%. I do see plenty of women as participants in this training program also. I don't know exact number, but some of the faces, most of the faces I see are women here. So it is now 41%. You believe it or not, I'm doing actually admission for law in Mysore, and 70% of admissions actually are obtained on merit basis are girls. Only 30% actually are boys. On merit, we'll have to supposed to give. I'll tell you. A day will come. Please take it down. A day will come. Men have to ask actually for a small reservation, maybe 10% or 15%. That is the level to which I'll tell you there's a growth actually of women potentiality in this particular country. And now it is 41%. I'm sure I'll tell you, judiciary, you believe it or not, I am actually from legal background. So once upon a time, judges actually, there were only 9% of the judges in the entire country. Now it has crossed 45%. Believe it or not, I'll tell you. In another 10, 15 years, the judges actually in this country, 70 to 80% of the judges will be women. Men have to stand before them and ask for justice, right? A day will come, right? A day will come where actually all women actually will rule. Go further. Establishing 14 world-class universities under 370 new degree colleges. We thought actually of establishing in each district one central university college of world class. Many of them actually have become third class colleges instead of actually world class colleges because the government support is not there, and the system actually has eaten up actually the vitality of those institutions. Nearly 400 universities, about 10,000 colleges have been accredited actually by NAC so far. About 400 universities out of 1,200. Maybe now I'll tell you the latest figure could be 500, and about actually 15 to 20,000, not even actually one third of the total number of colleges who have actually seen accreditation. And needless to say, what has happened to NAC, right? And the NAC actually now is evolving a new thing. They do not want to, in fact, actually send peer team committees to the colleges for inspection, because what the peer team actually does, you have read in the papers, and the NAC has purged 900 such actually professors who are actually members of peer team because of their dubious background, right? Now they say it's all online, right? Anyway, be that as it may. Going further, about 8 million students leave schools every year to join 1,000 plus universities. About 80 to 90 lakh students every year leave school seeking admission actually in the colleges, right? There are 54,000 colleges, and 80 lakh students actually who have just completed +2 seek admission actually in some courses. You do actually your arithmetic, 54,000 colleges and 80 lakh actually students. We cannot actually accommodate all of them because the number is too high. The fee of late, actually, there are marginal increase in the fee. Once upon a time, I'll tell you, fee ranges actually from few hundred rupees to few thousand rupees, right? And average monthly tuition fee in India in some of the government and actually aided colleges is equal to a cup of coffee in a cafe coffee, right? And the fee was frozen in 1960, and it was not actually revised at all because it is a democracy. The moment you rise 5 rupees or 10 rupees actually fees, there's a huge actual backlash from the student community. You believe it or not, I'll tell you, in UP, once the 1960, when the fees was frozen, the UP government thought of actually increasing the fees actually by 5% or 10%. Then the whole actually student community came on street and agitated actually very badly. And as a consequence of which, the government actually rolled back. They said, go to hell, we are not actually going to do, because the chief minister never wanted to lose his position by increasing actually 5% fees in the college, right? That was actually the kind of situation. And and whereas in US, imagine, I'll tell you, in US, it is about 60% of the total cost. In India, the degree that we offer, the entire expenses actually for the degree that we offer, so about actually 5 to 6%. 1 minute, 1 minute. ಚಿನ್ನಪ್ಪ ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, ಏನು ಕೇಳಲ್ಲ ಆಫೀಸಲ್ಲಿ. So only 5 to 6% of the total cost of the degree will be recovered from the students as fee, right? Only 5 to 6%. Imagine, I'll tell you, for a liberal arts program, the total cost actually for a 3-year actually BA degree is 3 lakh rupees. Only actually 12,000 rupees will be collected from the students. The rest actually will have to be borne actually by the government. This is the cost. The government actually cannot increase its budget because it is not even 3 to 4%. It has not even reached 3% of the budget. Either you take union budget or the state budget. No government actually has ever gone beyond 3% of its budgetary allocation for education. Out of this 3%, I'll tell you, 80% actually goes for primary and secondary education. You get actually only with, I'll tell you, one third of the total, maybe 1% of the total allocation for the higher education. This is actually the. So in US, they recover actually from the students 60% of the cost, and the remaining 40% actually the government spends. So their burden actually is lessened. Even a communist China, I'll tell you, it recovers actually from students 27% of the total cost. Here, worse than actually that communist country, we recover only 5 to 6%. So as a consequence of the government actually absolutely helpless actually in improving higher education, because it cannot simply afford. It has various other expenses, I'll tell you. It cannot afford actually more than 3 to 4% actually of its budget allocation for education, nothing more. It is certainly not possible. Funding higher education, I'll tell you, there are 995 autonomous colleges. I'm sure I'll tell you some of you must be from autonomous colleges here, right? There are 995 autonomous colleges, and in Karnataka has actually major, I mean, quite a number, nearly 100. And autonomy has not resulted in fee revision also. Once again, I'll tell you, the government and the student community is so strong, fee revision actually is not allowed. See, I'll tell you, heavy subsidization actually takes place, higher education. Lower education actually, or primary education, is the duty of the state. It must be provided free of cost. Health and education, any democratic country or any civilized country must actually give to its citizen absolutely freely. Health services and education. But these two things, for example, there are certain countries like European countries like Germany, Sweden, etc., etc. They made actually the education, including higher education, is highly subsidized, and health services. But whereas in all other countries, I'll tell you, so the education and health services actually is not taken care of by them. Look, the heavy subsidization, admission at tertiary level actually as follows, I've already mentioned, I'll tell you, and we cannot actually afford that. US actually has one wonderful actually system. It is called needs blind admission system. I'm just comparing, I'm not actually praising any particular country. I'm comparing actually Indian higher education system actually with other. What is this actually needs blind admission system? Say, for example, take Yale University. For a management actually course, an MBA program, I'll tell you, there are 50 seats, imagine 50 seats. These 50 seats actually are open for merit across the globe. Not that actually only American should apply. Any person from any country, they can apply. Okay, they can apply. And maybe few thousand applications will be there for 50 seats. They will select actually the best of the best from any country, give admission to those people. And many people, I'll tell you, they say we cannot afford, because in US, I'll tell you, for 2 years actually MBA program, you may have to spend at least in the current actually situation, 80 to 90 lakh rupees. Right? Not many can actually afford, not many. So some of them actually can afford, some of them say we can't afford. When they say they can't afford, the university will say, we'll give you loan, come and actually join. You can actually immediately after the completion of the course, you will be landing in a wonderful job, you can repay it. Some of them accept it. Some of them don't accept, saying that I can't even afford a loan. I can't even fly from my country to your country. I can't do it. If the university thinks that actually that person is such an absolutely good person, it says, your fees is waived off, please come and take admission. This is how actually it is called needs blind admission system. They will be giving actually 50 actually the most deserving students. The moment they get the degree, there will be corporates waiting for them to be hired. They'll hire, and most of them actually will not leave US, because no other country can actually afford such actually wonderful pay packages. They get stuck in America and they pay every month as taxes to the government, and the government will recover 10 times, 20 times, 50 times the money that has spent actually on them. This is what is actually called educational strategy. You invite them, give them a wonderful degree, get them actually a good job in their country, make them work there and pay actually taxes. This is it. Low endowment. And moreover, one thing I must actually remind. So the students actually who pass out of the university, they remember their alma mater or their university, and they contribute so heavily, because the Bill Gates you take, I tell you, take actually any other your corporate actually tycoons today, they always, I'll tell you, handsomely, in fact, actually donate to their actually universities where they came from. Look, this amount actually so much. Imagine Harvard actually years ago had $34 billion. I'll tell you, $34 billion actually is the budget of many countries. And this is the endowment actually of one university, Harvard. Yale had 22 million. And Stanford actually had 17 billion. It is not million, 17 billion. So much actually of money collected actually by ex-students. This money will be used for those students who cannot actually afford, but they have every competence to take admission. This is what is actually, they call it education as a long-term investment, right? It doesn't give immediate returns. And US system also is successful because tuition fee is appropriate. Say, for example, 100 rupees is the cost, they recover actually 70% from the students. When a person actually pays 70% actually of his educational expenses, he is very serious. Unlike actually in our college, our country, a BA degree you can obtain actually for a couple of thousand rupees. If you join a government college, I'll tell you 320 rupees, 450 rupees is the fees. 3 years you'll pay about actually less than 1,000 or 2,000 rupees to get a degree. With 2,000 rupees degree, I'll tell you, you take the degree so lightly, and your competence also is so light, I'll tell you, you are not actually employable, you are unemployable. Therefore, unless, say, for example, I asked to pay 25 lakh rupees for a degree, you take a loan, work very hard, and do the degree, you will have to get employed because loan is there, you become highly responsible. Highly responsible. That is exactly, I'll tell you, a student in US and Western countries passes out of the university, he'll pass out actually with two things. One, his degree. Secondly, the loan. Both on his shoulders, he walks out, right? He has to work, use the degree to repay the loan. I'll tell you, recently, the government of actually US passed a resolution, a decision it took. It said many of the old people, 70, 80, etc., etc., they have to be given some kind of a subsidy, housing subsidy, food subsidy, etc., etc. They added one more thing. Their education loan will be waived. At the age of 80 also, they could not actually repay their education loan. At the age of 80, the government thought actually, okay, we'll waive off. Before you die, we'll waive your actually loan off, they said, right? That is the situation. And that is too much. We should not actually go to that level also, be that as it may. Believe it or not, nearly $60 billion every year government of America gives in loan to students actually for education. $60 billion is not a small money, right? That's it. And look at actually the compared tuition fees, slightly older figure, you've seen. Austria, maximum is 746 actually for an ordinary degree program. I'm talking about 3 years or 4 years program. Minimum 756. Look at actually the slide. It says Canada about 5,000. Minimum is 1,366. China 2,500, 518. Look at India, 85 and $20, right? Slightly older figure it is. It is not actually significantly improved. Mexico, you look at Russia, 12,000 actually is the maximum fees. There is no minimum fees. Everybody has to $12,000 only. And South Africa, 3,000 and 1,000. United States of America, $6,000 and $1,000. UK, 1,500. So this is a comparative, actually, a older tuition fee structure, actually, of the various countries, right? So that is one. Next, universities, actually, in some of the countries, you see. Look, these are the universities that you will be able to see. Japan has a population of nearly 13 crore. It has got 684 actually universities. USA has got about 32 crore. It has about 2,500 universities. UK has got about actually 6 crore population. Maybe perhaps actually as big as Karnataka. It has 231 universities, right? Whereas Germany is as big as Tamil Nadu, 330 universities. India with 125, actually 140 crore people, we have 1,200 universities. You can simply make a comparison with 1,200 universities such for a population of 140 crore, grossly inadequate. Therefore, we cannot actually give a kind of a quality education to all these people. This is the reality. And the question comes into picture. So I have given you a very, bleak picture of Indian higher education system. You might even curse me also, sir. You are given only the negative points, right? Not a single actually positive points you have given. So now the question comes into picture. What can we do now? What can we do? Okay, we have all these actually problems. With these problems, can we ever actually salvage our higher education system? The question comes in picture. Yes, these are the few questions. I don't want you to answer. Keep the answers with you only, right? If you can actually effectively, positively answer these questions, sure, our country will not actually lag behind in another 5-10 years. I'll tell you, we can overtake anybody. It's, we are already on the verge actually of overtaking it. How many of us, these are the questions, right? How many of us teach from the original text, not just the textbooks from the source books? This is a fundamental question. How many of us really open the original source to study so that we can use actually that information? I mean, many of us actually go for second and third and fourth hand actually information to teach because our students actually are not inquisitive nor that actually, proactive to learn. Whatever we say, they are prepared to accept. How many of us teach from the notes that we prepared years ago, right? This is not actually given by me. These are the questions actually many of the academicians raised when they were actually studying all these problems. How many of us actually still refer our own notes given by our own teachers for, for my lectures today? And how many of us even actually have seen a journal, leave aside opening and reading it? How many of us actually are aware of current advances in our subjects? If you say, for example, take 2025 edition of a particular book, say on organic chemistry, the information in that particular book will be minimum actually 6 to 8 months old. Because in the production of that particular book, minimum actually 5 6 months actually it takes, and your information will be, however latest the book may be, the information will be at least actually half year actually old information, at least 6 months actually old information. If you want current information, what happened yesterday, last month, last week, etc., etc., you will have to go actually to the journals or other internet sources so that actually latest information you can get. And how many of us actually subscribe with our personal money for journals and magazines? We always actually give suggestion to the colleges and the university to subscribe actually certain journals, our own journals. And how many of us actually debate about the events and policies around us? And nextly, how many of us even know where our past students are, what jobs they are doing, and if they are doing research, what are the areas they are doing? How many of us love teaching, truly love teaching? This is $1 million question, actually, you must ask. Did we come here actually out of love for teaching, or did we come here actually for a comfortable, cushy job with a handsome actually UGC scale? These days, I'll tell you, many of the software engineers actually leaving their jobs and they're coming and taking up actually teaching job. You know why? It's so comfortable. It's so comfortable. You can apply leave. If you can't apply leave, students actually make you go on leave because of agitation and various other things. And there are plenty of holidays. No homework, etc., etc. So cushy job and handsome actually pay, and you have plenty of actually leisure time, right? So no. I'll tell you. I still remember one of the judges actually, the High Court once actually came to this college, and we were having a chat. He told me, Suresh, I think I am actually overpaid for the kind of job I do. He said, Sir, I asked, what are you trying to say, sir? Really, my salary is so much. I'll tell you, I'm not actually doing so much work, but I'm still actually paid on that. And he added one more thing. Teachers should not be given more actually salary. If you ever actually give them an attractive salary, they come for the salary, not for teaching. When you lower their salary, I'll tell you, only those people who really love teaching will come. I am sure, I'll tell you, most of you don't agree with me. I'm sure most of you will not agree with me. What is the problem with you, sir? The government gives UG skill. What is the problem with you? So there is no problem with me, I'll tell you. Love for teaching actually must come from within, not by UGC scale or any other kind of scale, right? Be that as it may. And look here, how many of us do not scold the students when they ask a question discomforting us? So when a student actually asks questions which are so uncomfortable, we said, shut your mouth and keep quiet. Don't try to act smart, we'll say. And that will be his last question in his stay in the college, because he doesn't want to get humiliated. How many of us really realize we indulge in as much fun? Imagine you go back in time, I'll tell you, when you were a student like that person, what kind of actually activity you did and how much fun you have at the cost of the teachers, right? All these things actually to come. When these questions are actually answered, and where we elevate ourselves to the level actually of true teaching, I'm sure I'll tell you, India has immense potential. I'll tell you, India's potentiality cannot be simply measured. I'll tell you, and it is going to be the knowledge hub, and we are going to, in fact, actually outsmart every other country. Only thing is there has to be change in the mindset. This is about actually the higher education system that actually prevails in this country as of now. Now I'll take up actually Karnataka State Universities. I was told there are many people from other parts of the country. Then you might wonder, sir, why we need to look into the Karnataka State Universities Act. I'll tell you, I don't say Karnataka State Universities Act actually is the most ideal act or something like that. UGC actually has given a format. If any university wants to have a kind of a structure. They have given actually a model university act. Means you follow this model act, and accordingly you can actually have your own act. So Karnataka State Universities Act also, in fact, based on that particular model only. You take actually 1,200 universities, including private universities, etc., etc. Most of them actually have similar structure with a different actually nomenclature, right? They call somebody is actually academic council, they call it actually the same academic council with a different name. They call it executive bodies, they call it actually in some other universities as syndicate, something like that. Nomenclature actually differs, but the function remains the same, I'll tell you. And this particular act, which needs very badly a kind of a revision, and it has not been done so, because that may not be the priority of the government, because they have various other priorities. However, I'll tell you, the government must realize that education policy is so important, because it's a long term investment. If you invest properly now, tomorrow and after 10 years, I'll tell you, you'll be reaping a good harvest, right? So keeping this particular point in mind, I'll unfold actually the events which actually resulted actually in Karnataka State Universities Act. It's a very sad story, and some changes also we have been able to bring in between. So historical background of modern. I'm not talking about the ancient universities, Nalanda, Takshila, and all that. I'm not actually going to talk about it. Modern university in the last 200 years or 300 years, how actually university system has developed in the world. So what is a university? What is a university? So Cardinal Newman's actually definition is, it's a school of universal learning. It's a wonderful actually definition. So it's a school where you learn something which has universal actually implications. You don't learn something which is so local, which is not universal, which is not applicable actually in certain parts of the country, or applicable only in certain parts of the countries. Not that kind of a knowledge you are learning. You are learning something, I'll tell you, which has got universal actually application or appeal. So, for example, chemistry is same all over the world. Indian chemistry is not different from US chemistry or Australian chemistry. It is all the same, right? That is exactly what is actually called universal actually school of learning. And it is also called contributions by 1,000 schools to make an university. University is one place, I'll tell you, where all branches of human knowledge actually will simultaneously coexist, right? But it is so different in India, I'll tell you. We have actually professional universities. We have a technical university, you have a medical university, you have a law university, you have an education university, you have an agriculture university. No, 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 I'll tell you, a traditional university in the West, I'll tell you, all these branches, I'll tell you, all these departments coexist as in one actually campus. This is very much required, because what is developing actually happening actually in near area of learning may have some kind of an implications actually on my area of learning. If we coexist, we can exchange ideas. We can exchange ideas. So that's not happening. That is one. Well, for our administration, I'll tell you, and for various other actually purposes, we have actually literally bifurcated all these universities. I'll tell you, Mysore University once upon a time had actually all faculties like science, technology, engineering, medicine, liberal arts, commerce, whatnot, actually everything, including law. One university. And the last, I'll tell you, 50 years. So first, actually, medical university, medical colleges went away. Next, technical colleges went away. Then law went away. Now the university has only arts, commerce, and science. BSc, BA, and BCom. Nothing else. So it has confined itself only to that particular actually part of legal knowledge. I mean, knowledge, which is not going to good. And university is a place where intellect may safely range and speculate. In a university, professor like you must be allowed to, in fact, actually work with absolute freedom. You think absolutely freely, the creative comes into picture. Say, for example, if I hold a gun actually on your head and say, write a poem right now, I want a poem, will you ever write a poem? When a gun is held on your head? Absolutely, I'll tell you, poetry will never come out of you. Something else will come out of you. If you really want to create something, I'll tell you, you must be allowed absolutely free. Okay, don't actually do anything. Write actually one poem actually for this particular subject. When your intellect actually safely range and speculate, creativity comes into picture. So universities actually must be seat of such wisdom and light of the world. So look at actually the wonderful definition. So good. And first, I'll tell you, in 19th century, Oxford and Cambridge universities came into existence. In 1836, University of London came into picture. King's College came actually 1831, and that is where exactly affiliation system actually came into existence. Affiliation system is, so for example, when University of London was established in 1836, there were plenty of actual needs across actually outside London, where the British government could not actually establish universities elsewhere. So what it did was, it kept actually seat of the University of London in London, and created actually small units of education and made them actually affiliating parts of the main university. So this is how actually the affiliation system came. University actually is located in one place, and many actually the colleges which are established around that university get affiliated to this university, because you cannot afford a university by yourself. So there is a university. This university actually takes care of the administration and academics actually of all the colleges. And in India, almost 54,000 actually colleges, I'll tell you, 70%, nearly 70% of them actually under affiliation system only, where some of the universities actually have 500, 600, 800 affiliated colleges, I'll tell you. The universities sometimes actually do only two things. One is hold exams and announce results. And they don't have time for any other things. Imagine only 500 colleges under your university control. 500 colleges and so many students. You'll have to hold examination every semester and announce results. You're so busy, I'll tell you, holding exams and announcing results. You may not actually find time for anything else, right? That is actually the problem of affiliation system. And going further, Wood's dispatch, 1854, Wood's dispatch, president of Board of Control, he actually said in India, because of the vernaculars, the classical language, this is one country, I'll tell you, there is diversity in language so much, I'll tell you, the whole world actually is really surprised to see this kind of a diversity. There are tens and thousands of languages, I'll tell you. Our constitution itself actually recognizes 23 official languages, including English, right? 23. And not less than actually few thousand languages, I'll tell you, which flourish, and many of them are dying, and some of them actually are growing. In order to preserve this wonderful culture, so Wood's dispatch said, we'll have to have some universities in Indian subcontinent, so that these wonderful actually cultures, I mean languages, can be preserved. And that is how actually our Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras universities came into existence in 1857. 1857. And University of Allahabad in 1887 it was established. And Education Commission 1852, Lord Ripon said, universities actually, he reviewed the working of the universities, then he increased actually affiliated colleges, because the population was so big, I'll tell you, they needed actually more and more colleges, right? So therefore, instead of establishing the universities, they established actually colleges and affiliated them to the existing universities. And inability to control colleges, three universities were unable, because imagine, I'll tell you, entire actually college system in the country in 1857 were affiliated to only to these three universities: Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. Entire, even Delhi did not actually have a university. You got my. And so then education actually made as a provincial subject. No, we don't actually deal with higher education in India. Provincial council actually must deal with. You can actually, if you want, have your own actually universities. The government actually, British government actually gave freedom. And that is before that, in 1915, I'll tell you, Madan Mohan Malaviya, under whose name this particular actually the present training actually is going on. He established actually Benares Hindu University in 1950. This was purely an Indian actually university, without any kind of British actually flavor in it or support in it, right? And Madan Mohan Malaviya was such a great person, I'll tell you. He approached actually the Benares king for place to establish university. King was so generous, actually, he donates 1,000 acres of land. He could have such big land to his credit, but he did not have any money. He literally travels across India, collects money, and established actually Banaras Hindu University, which becomes, I'll tell you, a central university in 2000, right? It's still actually one of the finest universities actually in the world. Then subsequently, universities of Baroda started. Universities of Mysore actually in 1916 it started. Andhra University started actually in 1926. These are which university system came. And imagine, I'll tell you, stalwarts and their contribution is something cannot be measured. Ashutosh Mukherjee, a great academician, Lakshman Swami Mudaliar, C.R. Reddy, Radhakrishnan, they were, I'll tell you, are the vice chancellors of many of these universities. And many of these universities actually flourished because of actually such wonderful academicians who dedicated their lives entirely for the development. You believe it or not, I'll tell you, many of the professors actually had such high status when they were offered vice chancellorship. They said, it's below my dignity. I don't want to be vice chancellor. Can you imagine? When a professor is offered a vice chancellor post, a professor actually would refuse, saying that it's below my dignity. It's below my dignity. I won't do it. These days, what happens, I don't have to tell you. Right? And many of the union ministers who are offered actually vice chancellor's post, they resigned and became actually vice chancellors. They resigned actually central minister's post and became actually vice chancellors. That was the period, the glorious actually period of Indian higher education. And I do not want to compare actually to the present context, as you all know it well. So I'll tell you, and we established actually UGC, University Grants Commission, which perhaps actually will be replaced soon actually with another body. So Dr. S. Radhakrishnan was asked to submit a report, and he submitted a report to establish a UGC on British model, as will with a full-time actually chairman and other members. In 1952, Union government decided that all cases pertaining to allocation of grants in aid to be referred to UGC. All. The central government, I'll tell you, education actually is concurrent list, is in concurrent. Both state government as well as central government actually can make laws in this particular area. So the central government wants to in fact disperse any kind of an aid to the university, it has to be routed through only the UGC. That is how actually it was made. The UGC Act with 28 sections came into existence in 1956, and it had actually 6 regional centers, one at Pune, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Bhopal, Guwahati, and Bangalore. Right? They are almost actually in a very confused state, because the UGC actually is going to be replaced by another kind of a body. What is the mandate of the UGC? UGC promoting and coordinating university education. You'll have to promote and coordinate actually university education. Secondly, determining and maintaining standards of teaching. What should be the standard of teaching, and what should be the examination pattern and research actually parameters. This has to be decided by the UGC, and all universities actually must conform to this particular kind of a parameter. And framing regulations on minimum standards of education. If you are offering a particular degree, what should be the minimum standards? Every year, university offers a BSc degree in some science subjects. What should be the minimum standard? A candidate who passes out actually with a degree, what should be his minimum knowledge and competence? That will be decided by UGC. And monitoring developments of in the field of collegiate and university education, dispersing grants to the universities and colleges. So whatever little funding actually the central government does to the universities must be done through this UGC body, and advising central and state governments on the measures necessary for improvement of university education. If you want to improve actually university education, what measures should be taken? Because policy matters should be decided by the government. It will lay down the policy, and the UGC actually will give its opinion, because it's a body actually of experts. It will give opinion, so that actually the opinion can be accepted and policy can be formulated by the government. And universities Karnataka bankrupt, and let me just actually tell you. See, in Karnataka, once upon a time, there were only three universities, and all the 3 universities actually were governed by various acts. Right? Prior to 1976, there were only 3 universities in the entire actually state of Karnataka. Just I would say 60 years ago. 60 years ago, there were only 3 universities. Mysore University, established under 1916 Act, recognized under 1933 and 1956. So this particular Mysore University had 3 enactments. 3 enactments. Then comes Karnataka University. That is 1949. That act was passed by Bombay legislature, not by Karnataka legislature. Bombay legislature passes an act and Karnataka University comes into picture. And comes actually out of these three, the latest one actually is the Bangalore University, which came into existence in 1964 Act. And all these three enactments had at least actually 5 enactments which were controlling these 3 universities. 5 acts, 3 universities. Therefore, in 1976, they wanted to replace all these 5 acts and bring in its place one act called 1976 Karnataka Universities Act 1976. Presently, there are 12 plus actual acts, including Karnataka State Universities Act, regulating over 30 public universities, state and public universities, right? And nextly, the 2000 Act actually said that review commission actually, 1976 Act actually, they thought it should review because they could understand, I'll tell you, this act doesn't cater to all the needs actually of the universities. They wanted, in fact, actually review 1976 Act. So they established actually a commission under Professor K.N. Raj as the chairman. It pointed out the following weakest points in 1976 Act. Even today, I'll tell you, these weak points actually are writ large in any university, not just Karnataka. Go across anywhere in the country, you'll find. Look, these are the weekend points. He said, appointment of VC on community and caste basis. You think actually today VC is appointed not on community and caste basis? Even today, I'll tell you, community and caste basis actually is looked into before appointment of a vice chancellor. VCs use their offices for filling their men. VC once appointed, I'll tell you, he would actually bring his own men and fill actually to the post of the universities. This is what's happening actually across the country. And nomination for Senate, Syndicate, and AC, these are the principal actually bodies of the universities. The members actually should have been purely academicians. But you know what kind of people actually rule the universities these days? You're all academicians, you know it, right? Who are the people who are there actually in the Senate, who are in the syndicate, who are actually in other academic council and other actually bodies, how actually they are nominated. Bangalore University was proposed to be a central university. They wanted to make it as a university for the country, but it did not even actually become central. Rather, it ended up as a municipal university. It could not even actually become a state university proper. It ended up as a municipal university. Dr. Raj, the chairperson, so beautifully mentioned in his report. All the 3 universities present a cheerless picture. Unless the present trend is arrested, students of Karnataka would be severely handicapped. See, this was the statement that was made actually in 1976. Even 2025, 2026, actually, this statement holds true. And I'm sure I'll tell even your state also, the picture is same. It cannot be. Then there was a second committee, Navneet Rao committee, 1994, right? Which suggested drastic changes actually in the act. And the bill was introduced in 2001 in government legislature, in Karnataka's legislature. And it was vehemently canvassed for its passage. Because at that time, the opposition was very weak, dilapidated, fragmented, and the ruling party had absolute majority. So therefore, the ruling party could actually place a bill of its choice and get it actually passed because opposition actually was not there to, in fact, actually make their points very clear. So severe resistance actually was there by the opposition because most of the provisions actually were undemocratic. It's a death knell to the system of education, they said. The government actually was not. The present Home Minister was the Education Minister in 2001. The present Home Minister actually of Karnataka was the Education Minister. And they modeled actually Bangalore University in such a way where there should not be any elected person actually in the universities because they had seen havoc created by elected persons in various bodies. They thought elected persons actually will create huge actually problem for the functioning of the university. Therefore, there should only be nominations. They thought that. when the opposition was making huge noise, the government actually gave only one option. Look, whether you like it or not, the bill actually is going to be passed because we are in majority. If your voices actually are to be recorded as part of the history, we'll give you chance. You can speak. You can actually make your observation. But if we try to agitate and actually stall this, we will throw you out and we'll pass the bill. And at last, the opposition actually burst and it makes observation. And how actually this particular act is going to cause dilution actually of higher education in Karnataka, they clearly mentioned it. The bill was passed amidst actually chaos, received governor's nod on 12/9/29, 2001, and gazetted the day. I'll tell you, at 5 o'clock actually the governor gives his assent, and 11 o'clock is what gazetted the same night. And with 16 chapters, 86 sections, it's a comprehensive act intended to overcome deficiencies. What were the deficiencies that were there till then? In order to overcome, this act actually was passed. We shall see the broad framework. We are going to see actually for next, maybe perhaps actually for half an hour, what are the broad actually frameworks. What is the break time here? What time actually supposed to break for time? I mean, tea here? One of you, please.
Sir, 11:15, I guess.
11:15. 11:15?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. 11:15. 11:15, sir.
Next session starts at?
Sir, 11:40.
11:40.
11:40.
Sir.
Okay. I have another 20 minutes. I am going to, in fact, actually give the picture. Look, this is actually the picture. And this is the picture of most of the universities everywhere in the country, right? Establishment of the university. Maybe perhaps I'll tell you the small changes of nomenclature provisions here and there. I'll tell you substantially most of the universities are like this. Like each university has a territorial jurisdiction. Means every university actually is established for a particular territory. It is not an universal kind of a university. Say, for example, University of Mysore can run a college actually in Calcutta or Delhi or Bombay. No, it's not possible. University of Mysore has a jurisdiction only within 4 districts. Beyond that, it cannot do it. And beyond that, there will be another university. Now, in the last government, each district has a university. It's a wonderful idea. Provide actually adequate infrastructure is given and appointment of actually teachers and faculties are done. It's a wonderful idea. So, literally, I'll tell you, in Karnataka, almost all districts actually do have a university. And 31 districts have a university now. Powers, what are the powers of the university? First, what is actually the responsibility of the university? First responsibility is to provide, to teach. Universities are meant to teach, one. Second, after actually teaching, you must hold exam because what you are taught has gone into the heads or not to find out, you'll have to conduct an examination. And after actual examination, the next most important thing a university must do is to do research. That is one place where the genuine research should take place. Nowhere else actually it is possible. You will have to carry on. And besides this, the universities can also confer honorary degrees. Honorary degrees means the degrees usually the universities give actually is when you prosecute actually a particular program for a particular period. Passing all the exams, you will be given a degree, BA, BSc, BCom, etc., etc. But there are people, I'll tell you, who have done so much of work, I'll tell you, without actually any kind of a formal education, without actually even going to the university or school. They must also be recognized and honored actually with honorary degrees. They call it actually honoris causa, what you call doctorates, right? And administer colleges and hostels. Universities must also do this job of administering the colleges and hostels. Collect fee, whatever little 5%, 6% or 8%, whatever it is, collect fee and accept endowments. There will be plenty of people, I'll tell you, generous people, philanthropists, who will contribute actually for the development of the university. We can do it and maintain discipline. This is an absolute mandate. The universities actually must maintain discipline. These days, I'll tell you, maintaining discipline is not a problem at all. You might wonder how is it possible. So thanks to our mobile technology, students are so much actually involved and busy with their mobile. They hardly actually remember anything else. Agitation, strike, and all that actually is something, I'll tell you, gone long back. When I was a student, I'll tell you, 50 years ago, there has to be one strike for 1 month in each academic year. Otherwise, that academic year actually was a very dull, insipid actually kind of an academic. For some silly reason, some strike. Where do you hear actually strike these days? Have you ever actually seen any kind of a strike in the universities? I'll tell you. Each is so busy with his own mobile, etc., etc. Hardly actually remembers anything that is to be required to be done. Maintaining discipline is not a problem. I'll tell you, it is not at all. And it is open to all classes of persons. All. I mean, there can't be any discrimination, I'll tell you. So every person actually, eligible person is eligible to take admission in the colleges. And not only that, the chancellors, the governors actually have the power to discipline and inspect and control. So there are multiple actually bodies where there is what is known as checks and balances. No one person actually is given absolute power to in fact administer. There are checks and balances. State governments, see, I'll tell you, in 2000 Act, state government actually literally took over all the powers of the university. So, for example, university was an autonomous body where the government actually would give some money to the university so that it can actually administer it. And they did not actually, because there was a self-accounting actually system, accountability within the system, the government did not. But later on, what happened actually, the government, once it gave the money, it did not have any power. But subsequently, the government thought that no, when we give so much of power, I mean money, you should also have little control. That is where Section 10 came into existence. What actually Section 10 says? Every decision that is taken by impinging upon actually the fiscal matters of the university must actually obtain prior consent of the government. So, for example, universities actually do have a budget. This budget actually is a big hoax. Because you know why? Because the budget, I'll tell you, whatever budget you make, if the government gives the money, your budget becomes meaningful. If the government doesn't give, whatever actual allocation in the budget you make, it's of absolutely no use. So therefore, the government has to give the money. 80 to 90% of the university's money comes from the government. Nearly 20% of the money only from actually comes from the fees and various other endowments, etc. So the governments actually have absolute control over the university. Next is, like, these are the officers, it's all you know. Chancellor, the governor who actually controls the universities. But in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and also in Karnataka, there is an attempt, and also some of them actually successfully, they said that in certain universities, they kept the governor out of actually the university system, where the chief minister actually becomes the chancellor. There is pro-chancellor. This was an added thing. You know, pro-chancellor is the one who comes in between a chancellor and vice chancellor, right? And this pro-chancellor is none other than the higher education minister. And the vice chancellor, he is the chief executive of the university. He is wholly and solely responsible for the functioning of the universities. Then usually vice chancellor actually will be a pure academician. In order to assist this person actually in administration, we will have registrar. A registrar actually who is in general administration of the entire university. Registrar evaluation actually is one who is actually totally in control actually of university examinations. Then deans, there are faculties, 5 faculties. For each faculty, there will be dean, a person who heads that faculty, and a librarian. The university must have a library, and there has to be a librarian, and a finance officer. Whether you earn or not, you will have to have a finance officer to manage the finances. So therefore, there is a finance officer. And the new addition actually in this act actually is director of PME board, planning, monitoring, and evaluation board. Anything that you do, I'll tell you, in the university, you will have to plan it, you will have to evaluate it, and you will have to monitor it. So there's a board which actually takes care of the planning of the universities. And there is what is known as a director of students welfare. Thousands of students they study. Their welfare should be taken care of actually by an office called the Office actually of Student Welfare. And there is what is known as College Development Council. This is the link between the university and the affiliated colleges. This is the link, I'll tell you, which connects actually all affiliated colleges to the university. And a director of physical education. Education includes inevitably physical education as well, sports, etc., without which no education is complete. Besides these statutory offices and offices, you can have as many offices as you want, depending on the need and requirement. Such offices of the university as the chancellor may, on the recommendation of the state government, from time to time designate. He can designate any one of them actually for this purpose. And chancellor, he is the vice chancellor. Chancellor is the governor. Governor is the chancellor and the head. He shall have powers as may be conferred by the act. What are the powers that actually the act provides? Those powers will be enjoyed by the chancellor, because every statute, every ordinance, every rule, regulation actually must be passed or determined actually in the university. Subsequently, it must be sent to the chancellor for the purpose of approval. Only then it actually becomes operational. Pro-chancellor, as already mentioned, look at actually section 13. Post-chancellor actually doesn't have any power other than presiding over the convocation in the absence of the chancellor. In case, if at all, if the chancellor cannot come to the convocation, then in his absence, pro-chancellor actually can come and preside over. That is what the act says. But in reality, he has more powers than the chancellors. That I will tell you later. Next is vice chancellor. Vice chancellor. So he is the man who is the chief executive of the university, and he is solely responsible and wholly responsible for everything that actually happens in the university. How selection is made? There are 4 members actually in the selection committee. They're nominated by UGC, state government, university, and the chancellor. These 4 people actually call for applications, and there are minimum actually required qualifications, and no person connected with affairs of the government or a university or college institution affiliate shall be nominated. The 4 people who are nominated should not be connected to any particular institution, government, or college, etc., because they have to be independent people. A panel of 3 shall be submitted. Before this particular 4-member committee, a panel of 3, they select actually out of the list actually of the prospective vice chancellors. 3 members actually will be selected, and chancellor, upon consideration of merit, equality, social justice with the concurrence of the state, appoint. This was very, very important here. Earlier, only chancellor had the power. The select committees will send actually 3 names to the chancellor. Chancellor actually will select one of them and he'll announce it. But now it says the chancellor actually must select a particular person basing on merit, equality, social justice, etc. Then with the concurrence of the state, means he must also consult the state government before announcing actually the list. And the appointment not open to challenge unless deliberate violations are. If the appointment immediately cannot be challenged in the court of law unless and until prima facie, on the face of it, there are certain violations. It cannot be done at all, right? That is one thing. What are the powers of the vice chancellor? He has absolutely all powers, right? Principal executive, ex officio chairman of academic council, perform all such duties deemed it necessary. In emergency, may take such actually actions. And registrar is an officer actually of All India Service, usually IAS, IFS, or IPS. So Karnataka University's Act actually tested all these people. IAS people, they came and they were frustrated, they went away. Then IPS people came, they frustrated, they went away. And the IFS people came, Forest Service people, they could not actually adjust to the university system. And now I'll tell you, after amendment, the university can choose one of its academician actually as the registrar, right? He is principally an administrator. Then qualifications, look, powers of duties of registrar evaluation. Registrar evaluation, I will tell you, he must be a state cadre officer or a professor actually cadre officer who has to be in charge of the examination. Finance officer, deans, librarians, and director planning monitoring, director CTC, physical education, all these things actually come here. These are the bodies. Syndicate is the principal body, I'll tell you, which takes all its decisions. Academic council actually is an academic body. It decides everything actually as to academically what should be there in the university. Finance committee about the finances. Faculties, the 5 faculties, arts, commerce, science, law, and education. These 5 faculties will have a person who heads it called dean. so that a kind of a coordination actually can be brought in. And there is this actually PME board, that is Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation Board. Besides that, various actually other bodies also will be there. So there are these kinds of laws that will be there in the university, every university. There are some statutes. They are also laws. You call statutes, a law is called statute. It is concerned actually with any of these bodies, honorary degrees, convocations, etc., etc. The law is called ordinances. It talks about admission and a degree of diplomas. The law is called regulation. It is about admission actual procedure. The law is called rules, when meeting rules and procedures are approved. These are the various kinds of laws they operate actually in the university system. And university funds, section 46, which actually comes from the government. Annual accounts, the government actually will do it. Annual estimates is nothing but actually your budget. The universities do it. And government actually has absolute power actually in controlling the financial and administrative aspects of the government. And at the end of each year, the university must prepare an annual report and submit to the government. Besides this, appointment of teachers, teachers and libraries actually should be appointed. Needless to say, wherever you go, I'll tell you, there are only 10% or even less than 10% actually full-time faculties are working in the University of Mysore. Nearly 90 to 95% actually of the faculties are ad hoc, temporary, on appointed basis. The government actually is not appointing because of the financial implications, as a consequence of which university system actually has taken a solid actually beating. And appointment in accordance with promotion schemes, which you all know, and part-time posts also, it can be temporary appointments also can be made. And there's one provision, I'll tell you, transfer of employees from one university to another university. Employees can be transferred. Both professors as well as non-teaching staff can be transferred from one university to another university. Affiliated colleges, I've already spoken. Permanent affiliation, withdrawal of affiliation, everything actually comes into picture. Before I conclude, I would like to just actually talk about actually these things and conclude. One is duties of a teacher. What is the duties of a teacher? I told you, duty of a teacher is to teach, hold exam, evaluate, do research, and help the university in administration. These are the 5 duties every teacher must do it. So problem comes into picture. Why, if they, and many of the teachers actually were not doing their actually duties. That is why this particular actually act became so punitive. It said obligation to perform examination duty under section 74. An examination duty a teacher must do. If it doesn't do, what is the consequence? 3 years imprisonment and 2,000 rupees fine. If you refuse to set a paper, if you refuse to do an examination duty, you can be sent to jail for 3 years, and you will be fined 2,000 rupees. Now, I'll tell you, you are worse than a thief. If you pick somebody's pocket, you will be sent to jail only for 6 months. If you refuse to set a paper, you will be sent to jail actually for 3 years. Because teachers actually were holding the government actually for ransom only during examination period. The long-standing demands are not met means they would go on strike only during exams. So in order to avoid that, this kind of a provision actually was brought in. Prohibition of private tuition. Any teacher who actually prohibits, engages in private tuition, it is prohibited. If he engages what to do, this act doesn't say anything. But Private Education Act says, if you engage actually as a government teacher or a lecturer, hold actually tuition, you are responsible. There will be punitive action actually in that regard. And reforms actually we have made, plenty of actually reforms we have brought in. And there are plenty of criticisms also. And every once in 5 years, I'll tell you, this University Act actually should be reviewed and suggested. This is in brief, I'll tell you about the Karnataka State Universities Act and the State of Higher Education actually system. The Karnataka State Act, not just an act exclusively and confined only to Karnataka. The provisions actually are universal in their nature, in the sense most of the other acts also have the similar provisions with slight changes here and there, but substantially all the same, right? I think this is what exactly says. As a teacher, I'll tell you, you have a responsibility to know which act actually governs your profession principally. Most of you never thought Karnataka, your state universities act is important in your actual profession. You never thought. No, I'll tell you. Ultimately, your universities act actually which controls your profession. It provides actually some kind of a privileges, duties, etc., etc. You must actually be aware of these provisions. If you are not from Karnataka, if you are from any other state, please try to look into your own actual act. I'm sure most of the provisions actually will be almost the same with small changes here and there. Once you go through, perhaps actually you'll get a clear picture, and you will also understand actually what are your responsibilities. I think